Welcome to another light conversation with Sherry Kay and friends. Tonight's conversation is going to be on emotions, expectations, resistance, and release. And so with the emphasis on emotions. So first, though, I just like to call in our guides, our spirit helpers, our ancestors, our soul galactic families, and ask them to be with us in our conversation tonight, and to bring forth any of the information that through all of our vessels that is for our highest good. So thank you. With love, honor, and respect. So our intent, of course, is to have this conversation for the growing, healing, and sharing of our truth. We also have the intent of raising the vibration for us and for all that is around us and all that join in on the conversation or to listen to the conversation later. I would just remind everyone to please take what resonates, leave the rest, and just know that we're all on our individual journeys at different levels, but that although we each have our own perspectives, all are welcome here. So I just wanted to mention that. So let's get into the conversation on emotions. So when I first thought, of emotions, I thought, defining emotions, that's not going to happen. And the reason why is because there's so many definitions for emotions. We could take one emotion and we could have an infinite amount of definitions on just one emotion. And really the point is not really to define the emotion, but just to talk about emotions, where they come from and how they can get trapped within the body, how it affects the body, how it affects the cycle of everything that we go through in our life, how we perceive things in the world, how we react to it. And so that's kind of where I wanted to get started. I heard, I've heard people say that we're the architect of our own emotions, that we have control of our emotions. And I think there are a lot of people out there that would like to differ with that opinion, because when they're having their emotions, they feel like they're out of control, depending on what the emotion is, right? And so that's what I wanted to talk about tonight, is that when people get into an intense emotion, a lot of times it's hard to get out of that cycle of emotion, and how it affects the body, how it affects our reaction, how it affects what we perceive, what's going on in the world around us. And so that is like the biggest part of the topic of conversation that I kind of wanted to bring out, just because it can be, a tumultuous sea of emotion for any one person. And when they're going through that, they feel like they're out of control. And so when that happens, that's why I wanted to talk about the subject, is that, are they in resistance? And if they're not in resistance to it, but yet it's still there, what is happening with that emotion? And why is it that they can't, or that they feel like they can't come out of it or control it or change it? And so that's what I kind of wanted to talk about. And then as we talk about that in resistance and release, just the way to give some practical ideas of what they can do to be able to release that emotion so that they can move forward. And that goes for all of us, because here's the thing: we all have emotions. We're all humans, and emotions are good. And we want to have emotions because that is what we're made of. But it's how we control the emotions that is the topic of conversation mostly, because emotions can be for our good, but they also can get to the point where they trap us in this energy, right? And when we get trapped in this energy of an intense emotion, like anger or hate, or some of those lower density emotions, then and when you're in that state, a lot of times it's not easy to come out of it. Some people can, like some people can just pop in, pop out, and it goes back and forth. But then it's just like, what triggers it, what keeps bringing it up. And if it does keep getting triggered, and if it does keep coming up, an intense emotion like that, then where is it really stemming from? And so that's kind of what I wanted to get into today. I know this morning I kind of had a little bit of a conversation, but I didn't want to talk about it too much because I wanted to talk about it here tonight. But what we had talked about was sometimes when we get into an emotion, it can be a trigger. So something that we get triggered by puts us into some sort of an emotion, and the emotion may be caused by an assumption instead of maybe a hard fact. And so something maybe is said to us, we take it a certain way because we're assuming that that's the way that they meant it, or it's a trigger because of something that's happened to us in our past. And so we just automatically assume that it's just it's the way that we basically have, it's either been ingrained, programmed, or sometimes we can call it maybe cultivated within our lifetime. And so then we get into this emotion on an automatic basis, so that when something happens and we get triggered by it and we assume something, then it's just like the cycle that keeps coming forward. And so that's kind of where I wanted to start with that. And so I know I did talk to Lorena just for a few minutes about that, the assumption versus the hard facts of looking at something that we're triggered by. And I know that you said, Lorena, that if I mentioned assumption, that it was going to trigger something that you had to say about it. So if you think about that, just pop in. So another thing that we can talk about as far as the emotions go is when we're experiencing an emotion, how do we react to that emotion? And so in that emotion, let's say it is fear. If we have fear of something. And so when we have that fear of something and we're in that emotion, if we react to it in a way that it's just like, oh no, I can't do that, or I don't, I just can't go there, or whatever it is that is making you react to it, there's a choice where you can step back from that emotion and look at it as an observer, some of the things that we've been talking about in past videos, right? And so as we learn how to practice and put into put these lessons in our lives and just practice these certain things that we've talked about in different ways, this is what's going to help us be able to step back and look at it and say, okay, it's okay that I am feeling this. It's okay that I have this emotion. And I'm just going to sit here in this emotion. And I'm going to feel this emotion. And I'm not going to judge myself for having this emotion, because it's okay. I'm human, and it's okay to have this emotion. And once maybe you need to breathe through that emotion, and you just need to get control over that emotion for however long that takes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. And then at that point, then maybe that's where you can step back and say, okay, why am I having that emotion? And so some people would say that that emotion is triggered by what is happening in the present moment, right? So this thing that happens, it comes up right away, and you're in fear of this, but then you step back and you're thinking about it. Now it's been 15 minutes, you've done your breathing exercises, you've really just taken the time to just get through it without judgment. Then you need to ask yourself, where is it really stemming from? It's not really maybe what I think it is, or this it is what I think it is. This is triggered because of something that happened to me a year ago. And but yet we're an adult human being that have been adults for a number of years. And so what we need to do then is say to ourselves, okay, I also remember having this kind of fear when I was 27. And then when we think about that, we're like, oh, wow, I did. I remember having this experience where I had the same kind of fear. And thinking back about it, so it's not just this time that I'm having this kind of fear, or I'm having this kind of emotion that is basically the same. And then when you look back at that emotion, when, at the present moment, say at 40, and then back at 27, then you're like, well, I need to go back even further. And, oh, wow, I remember having that when I was 16. I remember I had an experience, and I remember having the same kind of feeling, the same kind of emotion. And I remember it happening then. And then when you start thinking about it at that point, you're just like, well, that wasn't even the first time. I remember when I was 5 years old and I had this emotion. And it might be a little bit different each of these times in your life, throughout your life, but now you can kind of see that it's the cycle, right? And these intense emotions, when they come up like this, are really stemmed from childhood trauma. And so a lot of times we can't recall those things, but as we step back and as we observe in the moment, and then going back step by step, and these different memories that we have of experiencing this kind of emotion, then we come to the point where we realize that these kinds of emotions that are coming up, it's really all goes back to childhood trauma, and it's like a survival instinct, right? And so, and it doesn't really matter when you get into these intense kind of emotions. That's basically what is happening, whether we remember it or not. And so, if anybody wants to chime in, please chime in on just that piece of it. Otherwise, I'm just going to move forward.
Well, I'm thinking, so what is emotion? Emotion is energy in motion. And so, everything is frequency, energy, and vibration in the world, in this universe, in this existence. And so when the master key in all of this, just like we've talked about before with other topics, is becoming that observer. And so in the minute that you are triggered by something and you've got this emotion come up, you've got to recognize, ahead of time that you're the observer, so that when that happens, you practice it like you start to exercise like the ability to observe by practicing time. Once you grasp the concept, my internet's saying it's unstable. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It cut out a little bit, but you're okay.
Okay. So I think once you become the observer of yourself, and that this life experience is going to, part of the ride is experiencing emotion. We wanted this. And so we cannot just come here and just experience just the joy, just the good. We get to experience the things that trigger us and the things that make us uncomfortable, afraid, angry. I know we get both sides of the balance, and so once you recognize that, there's so many factors that takes you down that rabbit hole, which is so fun. But I'll start with just energy in motion and recognition of observing, and then not pushing it away. A good friend of mine called it whack-a-mole years ago. She's like, Lorena, you've got this NLP training, and you always rephrase and reframe all your thoughts. If you got something negative showing up, you just immediately smack it like a whack-a-mole, like the game. And I thought about it, and I just started laughing. And I said, yep, I sure do. And that was a good awareness, because that can trigger burying emotions, which means that they could show up later more intensely. So if you don't actually feel through it, it can show up later more intensely. If anybody else wants to chime in about that before I start down another rabbit hole.
I just there was a couple of things that were said. I wrote them down. And one of them is that we are feeling machines that think. And then another one was, and then another one was, emotions are the end product of an experience. And so whether it's good or bad, right? Or is it really good or bad? It's just the experience. So, and then also too, just basically when we get into those kinds of experiences, they basically all lead to the past. And so that's just something to keep in mind as we talk and move forward. But please go ahead, Lorena.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good because, well, what we all recognize is we are all products of our past, right? So now we just, I kind of described this at our event this weekend over at Nikki and Travis's wonderful event over the weekend, is you are born, you're given a name, here baby and child, wear this name until you're at least 18 years old, and I'm going to give you all the things that I think are the parameters that you need to live in, your religious beliefs, your how to respond to outside stimulus. And so we have all of those that we are our past, but then as we grow through life, we start to experience on our own. And as we experience on our own, we start to develop our own associations to experience and emotion. And so when you can finally graduate to that point of becoming the observer of the whole picture, then you can start to move through what's holding you back, because emotions can get buried and hold you back.
They sure can. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's I just have like so many notes that I was like, everything was coming through last night when I was writing through these. Now I'm like trying to read through them to just like, and it's just all so overwhelming. There's so much really good information out there about emotions. And just number one, emotions are good. They're okay. We're human, and we're all allowed to have our emotions, and we need to just make sure that we're not judging ourselves for having those emotions. It's how we react to those emotions. It's how we control those emotions. That's what's really important here. And so when a person is in an emotional state, in an intense emotional state, then how is it that they can control those emotions for themselves? Well, one of the things that we talked about just tonight was, looking back and asking yourself, when did I feel this? When did it start? Looking, going back and recognizing, identifying when this has happened before, and knowing that it goes back to past trauma. And so anytime we have an intense emotion like that, and once we take the time to feel it, and like I was saying, then we can realize that we can change the present moment. And so where we can't change the past has already happened. We can change right now, right in the present moment that we're at right now. And so as we're in that emotion, we have that choice. And so if we make that choice to do that, that's the first step to practicing to help you to get through it. And then each time it happens again, you do the same practice. You just step back, just have that emotion without judgment. It's okay to have that. Do some breathing, meditation, whatever it takes. Step back, be the observer, and then realize that you can change that emotion. And as you do that and practice that, each time that you do that, what happens is, it's like you were saying about the emotion is just that energy, right? So it's a trapped energy within when it keeps coming up like that. And so when you start to practice it in that way, then what happens is, the more you practice and the more you're being able to release it, And then pretty soon it's not in your body anymore. It's being held by your body. You have these trapped energies within your body, these trapped emotions within your body that keep coming up like this cycle, right? And so as you take the time to be in that present moment and to practice that and just accept it and then work through it, each time you do that and you keep doing that, then that's what's going to help release it out of the body and change the cycle so that pretty soon, instead of being automatically in that intense emotion, you're going to have a different reaction to it because your body is reacting to it different because you've practiced how to release it, let it go, and your body is attached to your brain, your heart, where all the emotions are coming up. We're all connected through that through our body. It's not just a thought. It's not just something that comes just from the heart. It's everything is attached that we have, and that energy is real, and it does become trapped within the body. And so that's where, when we have that intense emotion, it is important that we recognize it. So accept it without judgment, do the practice, and pretty soon it becomes automatic. And so I just wanted
I
to just
love
put that
that.
out there.
Yes, and two thoughts came up while I recall. One was when you talked about it's not just a thought, it's all connected. Well, that also goes to is it does start with the thought. And so one of the best ways to shift is to recognize what you're thinking about, because feelings are magnifiers of thoughts. So if you're feeling something, most often it's because you had a memory or you had some kind of an experience show up in your thought, and now you're having the same feeling, you're reliving it again, based off of the association you felt previously to something equal to or greater than that same scenario. So the one of the first steps is, what am I thinking right now? And so one of the best ways to shift emotions is from, I learned from Abraham Hicks and her chart of emotion. And she always says, reach for the next best feeling thought you have access to. So you're not going to be able to go from anger to bliss. You can just at least maybe, or say depression, grief, apathy, to thriving, like smiling and excited. So there's going to be just this whole gamut of emotions. And so what you can do is just train yourself to think, what am I thinking? What am I attracting? Like we've talked about in previous episodes, your brain is a transmitter and a receiver. So when you're transmitting a thought, it's going to trigger an emotion. And so now the emotion is more intense. So you're feeling so much now because it was a thought originally. But if you can even just know that, just be aware of that concept, you can shift your thought to something better. Even going from grief to anger is a step up in the vibrational field. And then you can go from anger to acceptance or neutrality, where, I'm going to care, but not that much. I'm aware of it. I'm not going to let this use up any of you only get so much energy in a day. I'm not going to
Right.
use it for that. So you just start to observe and analyze a little bit, but you're not denying that you're feeling it. You're one of my friends calls it his calculator brain. He's like, now I'm just kind of going, oh, okay. Oh, right. I've been here before. I'm going to just recognize that made me think of this, which brought up this feeling. And now I'm really, really feeling it, and it's intense, and it feels, I'm in the feels of it. And so, but if you can just start by A, recognition that you are the observer, B, what what am I sending out there? What am I transmitting energetically? What am I, because we are creating our lives. So if something shows up that's making you feel bad or feel anything on the quote unquote negative side or the not great side of instead of the joyful side, because we'll get into that too, because emotions are both, you know, we have joy and so many great emotions too that get to be addressed. And sometimes, you know, sometimes we just want to focus our life only over there. But when you can get to the point where we understand that both are necessary to just exist in this playing field called Earth that we're participating in and we chose to participate in, you know, I believe that that's what we've done. I mean, some people could argue that, well, I didn't choose to come here, but I don't know, just my innate feeling says that we did a lot of work to get here. And so these emotions are kind of, you know, part of the game, and it just gets challenging when it's an emotion that feels painful, or doesn't feel good. We want to, we're wired to go towards pleasure and away from pain. And so it just starts with that acknowledgement of what we are doing as a human, as a spirit having a human experience, and then becoming the observer of it, you know, acknowledging that we're feeling that way and be okay with that and ride it all the way through. It's called the wall of fire. You know, if you're going through that intense emotion, you just go through that wall of fire of that emotion, but you do it in a non-judgmental way towards yourself or others, and you just go, wow, okay, I'm experiencing and I'd really like to shift. So then that triggers that next thought, oh, what am I thinking? And then that'll help you, what's the next best feeling thought? And while you carry this on, I'll look for the chart and maybe I can share my screen and then people can see
Yeah,
that
that would
chart.
be great. Yeah, I know Michelle had shared a chart by David Watkins, I think. I'm not really sure, but that's the one that I found that looked like the one that she had shared on
Oh,
social
Dr. David
media.
Hawkins. Oh, that one started me 20 years ago. That one was one of the ones that he calibrated through muscle testing and kinesiology, the calibration of what the thoughts equal in the hertz, or I'm pretty sure it's the hertz. What are the thoughts calibrated at? And yeah, that chart has been one of my most favorites. And then Abraham Hicks, they put together another chart with a spiral going up and a spiral going down that I just love too.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, the energy frequency numbers are listed on the chart that Michelle had put up, and I think I had seen it before, but she really brought my attention to the chart when she had posted that on social media. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that I reviewed before we came on tonight. And I thought it was very interesting that you brought up the chart. So, yeah, if you can find it, that would be great because I'd love to see that one as well.
And one
But
other
someone
cool
was,
fact, sorry, fun fact about that, in the book Power versus Force, where that chart comes from, he actually talks about the calibration of consciousness over time. And so when you go into the calibration of where consciousness was, you know, throughout the timelines, and for the longest time, we were below 200, which is, you know, it's not really advancing, progression, ascending. And then once we tip the scale over the 200 mark, and we're working towards 500 is love. And when you get to that point, then your consciousness opens, and then you can start to observe easier. You can start to analyze those thoughts easier. And so when you really understand like the vibration of words, which goes back to our first episode that you did with words, it's just all linked together.
it is all linked together. And even if we do reach that higher frequency within that chart, and like you said, open up, we can still experience emotions on a lower frequency on the chart. But yet we just know how to react and control them better because of the work that we've done to get there, right? Into that higher frequency. One of the other things that was said, I just wanted to bring out that during the day, each of us have 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. And out of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts we have per day, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had the day before. That's a lot. And so basically what was being said here is that so when we have those same thoughts, what it does is it leads to the same choices that we make. And then those same choices leads to the same behaviors that we have. And then those same behaviors create the same experiences that we experience. And then those same experiences produce the same emotions that we experience. And then these same emotion then drives the same thoughts. So as you can see, it's this big cycle, right? That goes around and around. And that's why it's so important that when we keep experiencing these more intense emotions, then and we're having a harder time maybe reaching or getting out of those frequency into those higher frequencies, like you were saying, and even if it's just one step up, right? Which is, you know, a really good place to start. But if we're having a hard time just getting out of just those lower frequencies, then that's where I was talking about that practice. And just like you said, Lorena, just one step at a time. So I wanted to also talk about, so on the lowest on the chart, which is a 20, and then the highest being 1,000, shame was listed, right? The humiliation at 20. But you think of shame being at a very low frequency, but shame isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be, but it also can be a protective emotion. And what I mean by that is that if you think to yourself, you know what, if I steal from that person over there, that's going to bring shame to myself. And so then you don't go and steal that thing from over there from that person because you don't want to experience that shame when you think about it. And so in that way, it can be a protective emotion. So again, no right, no wrong, no bad, no good. It's just a level of emotions that you get into. But when you get into intense emotions in a negative sense instead of a positive sense, that's the thing, right? The balance, like you were saying, Lorena, it's the balance of those emotions and how you react to them, how you control them. That's what and having that balance is what's going to make you move forward and go up the ladder to these higher frequency emotions. So I just wanted to mention that.
Well, then you get into the law of attraction, which in quantum physics and the kind of the study of that, there's just been, we are just so blessed to live in this time where there's so much information available at our fingertips right now. And we can, you know, just look up, you know, there's just a lot of studies and a lot of things that have proven these calibrations and intention experiments and results. And one of the things that has really been a valuable tool for me is how long it takes for the universe to start coordinating. So what I learned is and this was years ago, it might even be faster because everything is speeding up. And if that's the case, it was already pretty fast, but it was 14 seconds for you to be thinking a thought. And then the universe, our creative field around us starts to gather in, you know, with that thought, it's energy, it's frequency, it's a transmission, it's a channel, so to speak, really, you know. And so when you are thinking a thought, if after 14 seconds, it starts to come together in the field, and then up to 68 seconds is when it really starts to move everything in the field to coordinate people, places, circumstances, conditions, situations, and events that are going to be a vibrational match to what you're thinking about. Then when they have taken that study further to emotion magnifies thought. So now if you're thinking a thought and now you put an emotion to it, which is why there's all this, sexual transcendental meditation, Kama Sutra stuff with sexual energy and stuff like that. That's kind of that same train, if you will, that same channel of intensity. So when you give it intensity and duration, so the longer you're thinking about it and the more intense the emotion is, whether good or bad, which is why the dark side will do seances and rituals. And that's why even the temples of the good side will do their own prayer and their own rituals, is because they are really aware. And even all the tribes, the indigenous tribes, everybody does ceremony and rituals and song and dance and intensity. They intensify one thought or one prayer or one song, and it just sends out the signal and it broadcasts it more intensely. And so when you are, thinking a thought, magnifying it with either heavy emotion, which is negative, or positive emotion, neither are good or bad, but one certainly feels pleasurable and one can feel painful. So I'm going to go with the pleasure feels good. So whether or not you're magnifying the good or the not good is going to magnify and amplify out into the field, where it's already calculating, it's already coordinating all those people, places, circumstances, conditions, situations, and events to come in, because it's a law of attraction universe. The law of attraction is something measurable. It's more potent than the law of lift, which is how airplanes fly. So the law of attraction is something that's not just woo-woo, it's not just new age, it's measurable and calculated. So nowadays, that's why it goes back to, again, why we are so blessed in this day and this time to have this information available to us. So once you are educated in how that works, now when you are in a quote unquote negative emotion, or even just a thought process, because sometimes you might even just have a thought process that takes you down a channel of thinking, because thinking and channeling in that regard just means that you're on a station, so to speak. So if you're thinking a thought about this, then it leads to this thought, which leads to this thought, just similar to a radio station. So if you're listening to country music on the radio, you're not going to get heavy metal generally. So it's the same kind of thing with how you think. And then feelings and emotion are the energy that magnifies it, again, which is why the dark side and the light side have their rituals and their seances and their music and their ways to magnify emotion on a specific thought. So coming back to how can that benefit us is, oh, okay, I am feeling triggered, I'm feeling pain, I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm feeling fearful or angry, whatever it is. If you can get your brain to stop for just a moment after the initial shock of it, and then go, oh, wait, okay, what am I sending out? You're aware now, you're educated enough to know that there's a signal being sent. And you've got 14 to 68 seconds for all that law of attraction, to come together to manifest either what you want or what you don't want, depending upon what your thoughts are and the level of duration and intensity of your emotion. Now you're educated enough to know that that exists and that you can just reach for a better feeling thought, which is on the scale of emotion. And you can look up the Scale of Emotion by Dr. David Hawkins in Power versus Force. I'm sure it's all over the internet. And then I did find the emotional guidance scale from Abraham Hicks, where it talks about the top up on the good side is joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, and appreciation. And then it goes down: passion, enthusiasm, positive expectation and belief, optimism, hopefulness, contentment. Then right at contentment, which is going to be similar to neutrality in the Dr. Hawkins chart, it goes into boredom, and pessimism, frustration, irritation, impatience, overwhelm, disappointment, doubt, worry, blame, discouragement, anger, revenge, hatred, rage, jealousy, insecurity, guilt, and unworthiness are near the bottom. And at the very, very bottom is fear, grief, depression, and powerlessness, and you're the victim. And when you're there, then that's why I said earlier, it's actually better for you when you can get to angry. You know, if you go from depressed, I'm not worthy, I feel like I can't do this, to angry, like, no, I've got this. No one is ever going to do that to me again. I am not going to allow that. Whatever that means, use that anger to your advantage. Now that emotion is a good emotion, because it's actually shifting you into a better and better feeling, which helps you to get into a better vibration, which gives you better thoughts to transmit, and then gives you better reception from what you're getting, because we are transmitters and receivers. And that's how the law of attraction works in a nutshell.
Yeah,
So,
well said. Yeah, that's so great. I know in my notes I had on here, like one of the emotions would be like anxiety. When you have anxiety and it's overwhelming, right? So to turn that anxiety into energized determination. So I thought that was a really great way to let someone know how, like, if they're having anxiety, just turn it into energized determination. Make it something good. And like you said, that 14 seconds to 68 seconds to turn that around. You know, if you've got these, mind racing, dreadful things coming in, or you're feeling kind of wretchedness within or whatever, and your brain is just searching to figure out what's going on, that's what you can do. Change the narrative, just like you said, Lorena, from anxious to excited.
can
Oh,
you see
oh,
the
there we
scale?
are. Yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
Okay, do you want to talk about this a little bit while you have it up?
Well, so I was just going over that, where this is the version from Abraham Hicks, and so it's a little bit different than Dr. Hawkins, but you can see that the spiral upward is where you feel good, and the spiral downward are those feelings that we don't prefer to have. And I prefer to say preferences, even though that sounded funny, because when we attach ourselves to good or bad, right or wrong, that judgment alone can be a channel that doesn't serve our highest good. And channel, again, just means that we are on a radio station with the universe, and our thoughts are the transmitter, and the universe is sending it to us, and our thoughts our brains and bodies are also receivers. And so when you just become aware of this chart, and you're capable of just even recognizing where you're at, and if you are in any of those spiraling downward emotions, that recognition of this is just a very valuable tool to help you get to the next best feeling thought that you have access to. And then you can start to feel your way through it, acknowledge it, observe it, experience it, and then go through that. Sometimes, just that next step. And then sometimes, you just the awareness alone can shift you to a more positive station.
Right. And so we all just need to remember that we're in a place of empowerment, right? We're like in the moment, the present moment that we're in, whatever the situation is, whatever the emotion that comes in, we're in a place of empowerment, and we have a choice, and we can make that choice, and we have the capability to transform it, just like you said. And I'm so glad that you brought up the law of attraction and all of that, because really that's exactly what's happening when we stay in any of these emotional states. This is what we're attracting in. So it's what we put out is what we bring in. That's how it works. And so if we can just, even one step at a time, like you said, and recognize these different emotions, whether it's on the downward spiral or the upward, it doesn't matter. But as we work on them, even just bringing it that one level at a time, this is what's going to change our whole mood, our whole thought process, our emotional process. And the more we do it, the more automatic it's going to come in and just be so beautiful for those that can put it into practice for themselves.
One more thing, if that's okay.
Yes,
I don't want
absolutely.
to interrupt you. Um, so when someone is on the downward spiral for, any length of time, day after day, because they're depressed or they're just discouraged or they're always worried, or like a parent is always worried about their children, or, they think that they're helping by saying, I'm so worried about that. I'm so worried about you. It's so much better when they can just go, you're empowered, you've got this, I'm not worried, I feel like I just have hope and faith. It's such a great thing. But what I was going to say is that downward spiral creates experiences, right? And so the experiences create attachments of memories, and memories have attachments to the feeling that you felt when you went through it. And so when you're on those downward spirals, that station, it creates what I call a negative ball of energy. And so you've got this negative ball of energy that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you're staying on that emotion for longer and longer periods. And so what's hopeful about that is just when you're aware of that, you can start to put your focus over on the upward spiral of even just hopefulness will shift you out of that negative ball of energy, and that big negative ball of energy, because you've been there for so long. The longer you go into the upward spiral, and it's you are hopeful, and you're just consciously competently figuring this whole thing out, and you're recognizing it and you're moving through it, then that negative ball of energy will start to get smaller as the positive ball of energy gets bigger. And over time, your vibration of your positive ball of energy around you will get bigger and bigger, and the negative will get smaller and smaller, and you'll start to see that, like, just like we were talking about, the more you do that, the more you practice it, the more you consciously do this, then you'll start to see that more of your life turns out the way that you want it to, even when you go through the challenging circumstances. And one of the really cool tools that I've used is a quote by Napoleon Hill. And every time I go into a spiral where I spiral down because I had an event that is not fun, it's a fearful survival, whatever it is, that comes into my life, I will go into that memory of what I learned about, oh, wow, okay, I've got 14 to 68 seconds to really cry this out or get really angry. And then I got to find some hope, and I got to feel good. And for just a minute, just laugh, or, have a list of things that you can laugh at. And then you can always go back and forth a little bit, but just, you're not burying that. But one of the quotes, the very quote actually that has helped me so tremendously is he says, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. And so when I'm down on those fear, grief, depression, whatever I'm spiraling into, and then I have that memory of, okay, I've got to shift, because I know I'm transmitting and receiving. And sometimes I'll even say, man, law of attraction can be a real bitch sometimes, because now I know how it works, and I really want to cry this out longer, which is okay too, by the way, as long it all comes down to intention, and that's another topic. But if your intention is, I'm going to get back over there, then it's okay to just, really cry it out or really do what you need to do in that moment. But I'll always say, oh, every adversity carries a seed of an equal or greater benefit. I'm so excited about the benefits coming from this, because they're going to be good.
Absolutely. You know, So as we're talking about all this, and as I'm listening to you, and it's such good information, I just know personally that sometimes it's just not as easy to move out of an intense emotion, or anxiety, or like even depression, right? Like when you get down into that lowest, deepest frequency, and the things, they just keep coming over and over and over, and you're trying to pull yourself out of it, and some days you can, but then you just find yourself back into it again. And it's not an easy process. And for some, they can struggle their way out of it. They can find that courage or that strength and just say no more. But there are others that it is not so easy for them to do that. And that is something that we would call resistance, right? And so the resistance can cause, a lot of problems for them, or, issues, or unhappiness, or depression, or whatever it is that you want to call it. Um, and it's really hard to say to someone, just pull yourself up out of it. It's just not that easy. But I think some of the best advice is not only just listening to these kinds of videos where we're talking about the different kinds of practices, looking at the different ways that it can be done. That's all really good information, and hopefully that the person listening can take that to heart, and to really put it into practice, and find that courage and that strength, that inner warrior strength that we each and every one of us has, to just go for it, and not to take the feeling or the emotion that we're having, that we're experiencing, not to take it personally. And again, that goes back to being the observer, right? And practicing that. As we practice being the observer, then it becomes easier for us not to take it personally. And as we don't take it personally, and we have that courage, and we get that strength up to take us up one notch more, one notch up, and out of that lower frequency, or moving our way back up that downward spiral, instead of going down. We just have to work so hard to get up there. So I just wanted to say that, because I know that there are some that really struggle, and it is not that easy. And I have seen that my whole entire life, with depression. And even though we have people that are awakening and know these practices exist, and they have the knowledge within them, and they know that it's out there, it's still not always that easy. But what I would just say to them is, go within, find that courage, find that strength, rely on your friends. That's what we're here to do. It's not a codependency, it's an interdependency, where we are a group of people that love each other and want the best for each other. And we want to be able to be there for each other, which is one of the reasons why we do this conversation, is because it's not just for the people that are on here, which I know it helps me personally, but I'm hoping that also to the people that come on and listen, that it helps them as well, or someone that they know and that they can have a discussion with, to help them come out of it.
Because
And so
we're a community too, where humanity is meant to be in cooperation and community, so that's
exactly.
that's where it's okay to reach out. You're not being codependent. I love how you said that. Thank you. Because I mean, I even found, with all my 23 years of study of law of attraction, and finding mentors, and plugging in all these tools, that I'm human, and I go through so many ups and downs myself. And so one of the things that you were talking about was finding your friends and reaching out to them is a positive thing. And there's a program in the field that says you should be able to do it on your own, and make it on your own, and show that you can do it, and be strong. And I would encourage all of us here, and everyone listening, to remember that it's okay to seek out your community, your like-minded people and connect with them, and even let them know I'm struggling, and I'm going through a hard time right now, but I mean, I'm so thankful to learn, and to be together. But it's a good thing to reach out. And also wanted to mention, while you said resistance, that that we get into resistance, I was also going to say there's also an uncertainty. So sometimes when we are uncertain about how something's going to go, it can very easily spiral us on that downward spiral, just from the uncertainty. And one of the best books for that I found is by Deepak Chopra, and it's called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And he has a whole chapter on uncertainty. And even for me, I struggle sometimes with that. And Chris will, he'll be like, "Oh, are you feeling uncertainty?" And then I'm like, "Yes." And he'll remind me to go back and read that chapter. So I just wanted to throw those in there.
Well, I'm glad that you did, and it's really good information. And I know some of the things that I jotted down last night was, how to get out of that resistance. Some of the things that we can do is to, read a book, read something that's going to help us. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. Another thing is, and that we've talked a lot about in our group, is the movement of the body. I know over the weekend, we got out with our group for a whole weekend event, and we did a lot of that, moving our body, dancing, self-expression. And I think that it's such a release, and so beautiful to be able to do that. I think it just automatically changes the mood. It changes the endorphins, like everything within the body. It just changes the whole perspective, right? The self perspective of a person. And really that's where it starts, is the self perspective, right? I just wanted to mention a couple of things too, that when we have a reaction, like maybe a not so good or not so positive reaction, it's probably because we're out of balance. And the other thing too, as we're coming out of that resistance, we have to remember that when we intervene for ourselves, because that's the first person that's going to intervene, is us, me, myself, and I intervene for myself. When we do that in that present moment, which is needed to change that emotion, it not only is a responsibility, but it also can be uncomfortable for us. We also just can get caught up in our own narrative. And so we need to be careful of how we tell ourselves the story. So whatever it is that's going on, we talked about self-talk in the last couple of episodes. It's how we tell the story to ourselves. And so that's something too that can also help us with these kinds of emotions or anxieties or depression or things that really come in for us. And so I just want everyone to know too, that's listening, that we can change our future. We can change the way that we react, the way that we think, the way that we perceive. All of those things can be turned around if we know that we're in this lower frequency of emotions or frequency, period. We can change it. We have the power. We are empowered to do it. And the best time to do it is in the present moment, because we can't change the past, but we can change the present. And as we change the present, we change the past. Just saying that's
a
how.
fact. That is so true. Oh my gosh, Sherry K, brilliant. I will let you keep going, because I just wanted to, I wanted to piggyback on that, but
Okay, so the only thing I was going to say also too is that just that the more that we practice these things and put them in our lives, and like I said, it's not always that easy, but just changing up your routine, calling one of your friends that is going to have this positive influence on you, reading that book, going out, doing some dancing, yoga, movement, walking in nature. What a big, that's huge for me. Just taking a walk on the local bike trail here out in nature is just so healthy and beautiful for me. It changes my mood. I start looking and seeing the butterflies, and then I see the rabbits, and then I'm seeing the insects, and I'm just like, all these different things are coming in, and it just changes my mood completely into just a really positive place. And so I just kind of wanted to share that, as far as if you're feeling that resistance, and if you're having a harder time releasing, and it's just not as easy done as it is said. These are some of the things that you can do to get you into that place. And just remember that there are people out there that care, and that if you are alone and you find this channel or you listen to this video, put a message, a comment in, whatever it takes. And, as we see it, we're definitely going to respond, because we believe in the human family, in the human tribe, in the human race, and each and every one of us, and that we are empowered, and that we can do it, and that we can, work on our own process of ascension. And it can be so beautiful and so joyful and so happy. And even though it isn't always, just remember that we do have that choice. It is a choice. We each make that choice, and we don't have to live in the past. We can just live in the present moment and change it.
Love it. And when you were talking about how you tell your story, it's just amazing. Your notes are fantastic and phenomenal, and divinely coordinated, because I still get reminded, and it's to when I'm in my spiral, so going the wrong, not necessarily wrong, but down, and I will share a story. Chris, having someone, a friend or someone like I have Chris that I'll sometimes tell the story to, and he'll tell me, rephrase that. And, even to this day, I will find myself getting to tell a better story about an event that happened. And that goes back to what we talked about with words, and the meaning of words, and the association we give it. And so, there's always a better way to tell it, and what are you saying? What are you transmitting when you tell your story? Even if it's true, this is the details of what happened. But you could say, just thinking about how you're sharing it. Are you reliving it? Oftentimes when we share it later, we're reliving it. The mind does not know the difference between that which is real and that which is vividly imagined. And that's something that they've proven as well on some scans and things. So that's why when we tell a memory of a story, we get the same emotions. Or that's why we cry when in the movies, when something happens to someone that we can relate to them. It's because there's actually a physiological association with something in our past. And so the way you tell your story, and just being aware of the words that you're using and the vibration behind it, tell it as a story, as an experience, instead of reliving it, is so mastery. It's just self-mastery, and brilliant and beautiful. So thank you for bringing that up. And then also on the physiological part of moving your body, years ago, for 20 years, I would say, Tony Robbins was one of my main mentors. And what I loved about some of the things that he said is, he says, I'm not just your motivational guy. I am your why guy. I am the guy that is going to explain why your brain does what it does. So one of the things that he said is, when you physiologically move your body, it will move your emotion. And so the fact that you brought that up was just brilliant too, and just perfect divine timing for this conversation today. And so thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lorena. You're always so sweet when you say those really kind words about me. I appreciate that.
Can I interject?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Hello, darling.
Hi, guys. I just want to thank both of you ladies. Like, this is probably one of the best conversations for me, and I'm going to go back and listen to it because like my journey has been going on for a while, but really just like I've shared with both of you in the last year, I've really been facing emotions, right? And you talked about resistance and like I think my frustration, I don't want to like is
Okay.
I don't know how to get rid of the resistance. Like I know and not every day is like this morning. So I wake up every morning with this horrible like overwhelming fear. You talked about childhood trauma, and I was thinking like, I spent a good amount of my life being raised by someone who is just constant panic, right? Or a constant worrier. And so becoming self-aware of like that stuff, like I'm aware of it and I'm like, okay, Michelle, like I'm constantly talking to myself, right? And it drives me crazy because it's frustrating. Like you say, it's easier said than done, right? But I still have that spark of hope, and that someday I'll be where you ladies are, that I can feel that confidence of empathy and understanding for other people who go through it. And so that's why I continue to keep trying no matter what. No
And
matter
you
what.
will, as you're going through it, that is one of the most beautiful parts of this, is that you will have that ability to relate, because everything that you say, I relate literally. And so it just gives you this compassion and this ability to say, let me share with you what has worked for me, and it might work for you. And one of the most beautiful things that you're doing is talking to yourself. It's something, again, that we are programmed in one of the ways growing up, that talking to ourselves is kind of bizarre. Find someone else to talk to. Well, I struggle with that, and I've always struggled with that. But it's so healing to actually talk to yourself and say, oh, I'm starting to see that differently. I'm starting to be more aware. And that is literally the pivotal point. So you are at the most beautiful point.
But it is hard, I
Mhm.
guess what I want to say to people, whoever else listens to this, is like, just don't give up, right? Like I made myself do yoga this morning, 20 minutes. I made myself do my chakra clearing. I made myself, and the whole time I'm feeling sick, like sick to my stomach. Um, and then I was like, okay, now you got to take the like I have to like push my way through it, right? And it is difficult, and I'm so grateful and thankful for conversations. Sherry Kay, thank you so much for, and just listening to you, Lorena, is like you've had 23 years of practicing this, right? And I'm like, God, I hope I'm alive for 23 more years so that someday I can be a light. I am a light right now in my own ways, right? Like I am a light, but it's for the first time in my life, like I've I'm alone, and I'm learning to live alone and learning to go through those fears of being alone, and it's just beautiful. And so I just wanted to like jump in before this ended and just tell you ladies both thank you, and anybody else that listens, like, you know I know you guys personally, and it's been such an amazing journey and a blessing to have people like you, and just to know that there are people who care, genuinely care, right? Because we're losing that in our society today, but we also have to become those people. And so encouraging others to do their work so that they can be encouragers, so that hopefully the world will become a better place, because it's becoming scary right now. And
I
I love
love that, Michelle. Thank you so much. And I see us holding hands in the dark and holding hands in the light, because
absolutely.
we're gonna ride through both of them. And then when you just know that there's not anyone out there. I don't care how much they call themselves a light worker or a guru or a sage or whatever. If they're in a human body, they're going to go through challenges too. And I think the ones that can really understand the people who are really hurting and really struggling are the ones that have been there. And that's where you are a beacon, because you know, and you can say, I don't just share with you tools that I've learned. I can tell you I've lived what you're living, and I feel you, and I'm here with you, and I'm holding your hand.
One of the things too, I was thinking as you were talking, Michelle, is one of the things that you will be able to say as well is that one of the addictions that you broke was also breaking the addiction of emotion. And so when your time comes and you have this person that's coming to you and you're talking to them, and like Lorena was saying, they're going to be looking up to you because you've had the experience, you've been through it. You can empathize with them, and you can teach them, and you can show them the way. And truly, that having that self-forgiveness, to be able to overcome, to truly experience the freedom from that kind of addiction and just be completely liberated will be amazing. And I would like to applaud you, that because I know that you struggle, and I know that every day is different for you, and we all have our struggles. I know that yours are a little bit more intense than others, but I would applaud you for the work that you do, because I know that you take all of these things, you put them into practice. You are the warrior queen out there that is just doing the work every day. And it's like you said, some days it's just so hard, but you still have that hope, and you don't ever give up on that hope. And that is what's bringing you through it. And you know what that is? That's awareness. That's self-awareness. And I applaud you for that, because that's basically what this all boils down to, is having that self-awareness, that self-perception, looking within, doing the work. And that is what you were doing. And that is what everyone has to do to get to a point where it starts becoming more normal, where they can experience that joy when they wake up, instead of having that dread or that fear or having that anxiety. Pretty soon you're going to be waking up, and it's going to be what did I call it? Like an energized determination. Instead of having the anxiety, you're going to wake up and you're going to say, okay, I'm doing this energized determination to do this. And that's what you did this morning. You got up and you got to do the yoga. You got to do this. You got to do that. Not that you had to, because you have a choice, but you got to, and you did, and you made that choice. And it was a great choice for you. And it helps. And the more you do it and the more you practice it, the more you're going to be able to feel that freedom. One of the other things too that I just wanted to mention is something that Nikki had said over the weekend that I thought was really, really great. And it was probably the only note I took over the weekend, because I was really just really taking all the information in and wanted it to come out organically in ceremony. But so she had a 5-step program that she would give to each individual. And the first one was self-awareness, and that's what we've talked about. And self-acceptance would be the second one. And that's where we all need to do. We need to have that self-acceptance. Then it's self-expression, something that you're also doing, Michelle, and I applaud you for. Self-care. Self-talk is part of that self-care. So I applaud you for that as well. And the fifth one is self-love. That really important, right? So I really like that. Self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-expression, self-care, and self-love. And so I just wanted to mention that before we get too far down the road and we end this. So yeah, just that we're all able to change our story. We're all able to change our emotion. We're all able to change our perceptions. And as we do that within, it automatically is part of the world that you live in and comes back at you. So I just really love that. Were you going to say something, Lorena?
I don't know, was my expression telling you so?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not very expressive at all. I had an aha light bulb. Another thing that really helped me too was someone taught me once to experience the emotion, but don't become the emotion. And just
Very
that
good.
thought, when I'm really feeling it, like because of the certain condition that I have with my brain, it's sometimes I get really stuck and paralyzed, and I can't get myself to do what I know, and it's so overwhelming and so frustrating. And then I can get stuck on a channel of that lower vibration, and the best feeling thought for me is that hope, Michelle. So I relate to that, because sometimes that's my lifeline, is just hope. But when I realize, oh wait, first off, who am I really? Like we talked about this weekend, that's how you get through a lot of the things that are challenging, is recognition that this is an experience that we're in. Who am I really? When we talk about self-love, it just means that source love, that love that is so pure and so beautiful and far beyond what we can understand, but it's so encompassing of the highest and greatest joy and love and caring and support possible. And that's who I really am, and that I'm just experiencing this little earth life as Lorena for now. Then I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I'm the experiencer of this heavy thing that I'm going through. And even just for a minute, it just helps me to shift enough to change the station and get out of the static in between stations. Like, old radio stations back in the day, when you were changing the channel, you would get static in the middle of the two stations. And so, what station am I on? Am I feeling this, or am I identifying as this emotion right now? And sometimes that just helps me reach for that next best feeling thought.
Yeah, that's great. When we started the conversation, I started talking about, like the cycle, right? The cycle of emotion and the thought process, and how it's just this cycle that goes on. But it can still be a cycle and a repetition of a cycle, right? But with that, the cycle that we want to um, cultivate within our present moment is by saying affirmations, which is something that we talked about before, right? And so when you are commanding when you're saying affirmations, I am joy, I am love. When you start saying things like that, that's in that higher vibration, I have the note on here that you're commanding your body into a destiny. And so remember, I was saying how that lower energy or the lower frequency emotions is this trapped energy within the body. And once we practice it and we start releasing it and we're able to get it out, and as we start saying those kinds of affirmations and having more positive emotions come through, and the more we do that, and the more we have that cycle, that repetitious cycle of it, then it changes our destiny. It changes our whole world. It changes everything around us. And so it still goes back to intention, choice, doing the work, being self-aware, self-perceptive. And in the end, you have freedom, liberation, joy, love. So it really has a beautiful ending, if
And
there is an ending. Yeah.
acceptance, you get to
Oh,
that acceptance of both, the whole thing. You get acceptance of all of you. You're like, okay, I don't have to be this, whatever, even just your own expectations of yourself. That gets into expectations carry a lot of loaded weapon of emotion. And
absolutely. Yeah.
that was beautiful. That was the perfect way to, yeah, that was good.
Thank you, Lorena.
It's just, Oh, it's just so beautiful. Sometimes the synchronicities and the synergy of the universe, because I think I might have shared with you that a few days ago in a conversation, when I first woke up, what it was a quote. And I had never seen quotes. I had never seen affirmations. I grew up very religious, and in my religious culture, it was they bridle you and they say only read our literature, otherwise you will get steered down to hell. And so I wasn't exposed to anything like that. I had no idea it even existed. And I read this quote, which is the perfect quote for what you just said. But it went like this: be careful of your thoughts. Your thoughts become words. Be careful of your words become actions. Be careful of your actions become habits. Be careful of your habits, watch your habits, because your habits are your destiny. And then my friend looked over at me, and that quote woke my mind up. And I started to go, oh my gosh, I have been thinking, I mean, I was depressed, suicidal. I had failed marriage, 2 of them within a year, like my marriage with my kid's dad. I was 15 when we got together. And then when I got divorced from him, I met somebody, and we, because of my merit, my religion, I got married right away within a year. And that was what you do in that religion. And that failed horribly. And I was suicidal. I was depressed as you could get, and just in anguish. And when I read that quote, it just sparked the memory of, oh, wow. And I felt this Pandora's box open of my thoughts really are going to help figure out my navigation system of how to get through this feeling that I'm in. And so that was the quote that literally changed my life.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so good. One of the books that was brought to my attention was it's called Letting Go, and I believe that's also from David Watkins. I think that's his name, Hawkins. Excuse me, David Hawkins. He has a book called Letting Go, and I have not read it, but I've seen parts of it quoted. And I don't know if that would help anybody that is in resistance and having some issues that way, but maybe that's a possibility to, like I said, when you read a new book, you start movement, you doing something new, learn an instrument, just keep going and keeping busy with something new and learning and expanding. That is going to help. And so I think we pretty much covered all of it. And it was a lovely conversation. And I thank you, both of you for participating in it. We had a couple of others that were on but had to go. And so anyway, I guess until the next week or the next time I have another light conversation, I don't know if I'll do it next week or not. I have a lot on my plate right now, but I will post it and invite you back to participate, and anybody else that would like to as well. All are welcome here, and we enjoy the conversation so much. So thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Lorena. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you both have a very good night, a good week, and I hope to see you very soon.
Thank you for doing this again. And it's always just a wonderful sharing and connection and community and support and so much love. So love you both, and so happy to be a part of this, and just sharing pure love with the world and just in these conversations. So
Thanks,
wonderful.
Lorena.
Okay, see you guys.
Bye.
Bye, Michelle. Bye, Lorena.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.